Welcome to the All Axxess Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen. This week, a name we have not seen in a long time. Very excited to sit down with him, a former New England wrestler, has wrestled all over, really. Ladies and gentlemen, I know him as Louis. You may know him as Lance. You may know him as Suicidal. Mr. Louis Silva, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Joe. It's been a while.
Absolutely. Good to have you here. Take a deep dive into your career as we do each and every week. And, let's start from the very beginning. Your humble beginnings. Where did you start as far as, you're growing up a fan, whether it's, a young child or a teenager? When did you first discover pro wrestling? Who were some of your favorites growing up?
What a cool question, bro. And like so many other wrestlers, past and present, we all were fans. A lot of us were fans of wrestling back in the day. Mine started probably when I couldn't tell you the exact age, but I think I was probably about like 5 or 6. And I remember sitting, with my dad in the living room, and his favorite was, Jimmy Snuka, Superfly Jimmy Snuka. And he would be like, that was the high flyer back then. So he would be, he would love watching Jimmy Snuka. So I got into it too. And I would always tell my mom, I'd be like, I'm going to do this one day. I want to do this one day. I'm going to do this one day. And, as I got older, I always was a wrestling fan. And as I got older, I'm a teenager in high school in the late 90s, mid to late 90s. And, DX was running wild, Stone Cold. You know what I'm saying, dude? Yeah. So, excuse me. I was really ramped up as that style wrestling fan because we were bringing it to school with the whole DX suck it, with like Stone Cold being the blue collar badass he was. Yeah. So we were bringing that into school too, and messing around with your friends at school. So I've always been a pro wrestling fan, even into from as I can remember as a young kid, all the way up into my teenage years, and then. Yeah, that's how I got it, man. But so let me tell you this, though. I was a big fan, of course, of like WWF at the time, right? Yeah. And WCW never really, NWA, WCW, when I was young, never really appealed to me because they weren't, believe it or not, as colorful as the WWF was. If you watched Southern Pro Wrestling back in the 70s and 80s, it was kind of like, it was dim, it was like dingier, darker, right?
True, yeah.
And then you watch WWF and they were cool. They had like larger than life characters. They were different colors. So that was my style of fun of pro wrestling. But as I got older, I absolutely, my mind shifted to, watch the art and the talent and learn from all aspects of whatever league is out there. You know what I mean? Of course, a lot of my old fans used to know I used to love ECW. Really, really, I got really into ECW. A lot of us did. It was different. It was extreme. During the ECW era, I was a huge fan of ECW. So much that when I started pro wrestling, I was so green that I wanted to bring ECW style moves and matches into my matches. And, what a foolish thing to even consider.
But you weren't alone. I mean, at that time, there were even promotions like Primal Conflict and stuff that, kind of took a piece of ECW and tried to make it their own, So that's just how it was back then at that time,
They were trying to capitalize on what was hot at the time, to be honest,
Yeah.
You bring up Primal Conflict, and they, they were bringing in ECW stars. They were bringing in the Pitbulls. They were bringing in, I think they had King Kong Bundy at one time, who I think he had taken a small tour of ECW at the time, at around that time. But they were John Cronus. They were using. So yeah, totally. I mean, I love that style of wrestling. At that age, and everybody was trying to capitalize on it, especially I think in the New England area.
Yeah. So let's talk about, it was either 1998 or 1999. I think it was 98. I met you at the PAL Hall. That was the first time we had met. That was for Yankee Pro Wrestling, backstage of the show. I was doing interviews and promos and that sort of thing. I was brand new to the business, 16 years old in 1998. But to think about it now, 26 years ago, I interviewed you backstage at Primal Conflict Wrestling. And it was the Wonderland Dog Tracks for that PCW show. That was the year 2000. 27 years ago, rewinding back even further, You did a studio show for me for Cox Cable, doing the interview there. So it's been a long time. This is our third interview, fast forward all these years later.
I remember those both. Like you were my first. We were on the radio at the first interview you and I had. Right, the first interview you asked me to do, and I was like, I had to go to work that night. Right,
Right.
not gimmick work. Right,
Yeah.
like we all have. Excuse me. So go to the gimmick, go to the job, and then. But before that, you were like, "Can you be here at like 1 or 2 p.m. or something like that?" And it was all the way in like East Providence, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah.
And I was in Fall River. And I was like, "You're damn right. I'm going on the air." I'm 17 years old at the time, bro. And I'm like, "What? The opportunity to go on the radio? You're damn right." So, I drove my happy ass all the way to you. We did some a small promo. We did all that. I think I even challenged Sabu.
Yeah.
In
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
I'm 17. I'm brand new in this business. I'm greener than and I'm over here challenging Sabu. I am thankful that I never wrestled Sabu at that age because he probably would have whooped my ass for real. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly. And let's talk about that. You broke in. Let's talk about how you got in the business and what inspired you to finally decide, what, this is something I want to give a shot.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I always wanted to be a pro wrestler since I was a little kid, right? So as I started getting, I always read the magazines and bought every single magazine. I was a big reader at the time, especially of like pro wrestling magazines, working out magazines, because I wanted to be that and showcase that in pro wrestling, right?
Yeah.
So I'm reading I even started getting the Torch, Pro Wrestling Torch, which was like the dirt sheet back at the time with Wade Kell as the editor, right? And he, so I was reading all that, deep diving into everything. And somewhere along the way, I started seeing Larry Sharp's school in New Jersey, the Monster Factory. And me as a young, 15, 16-year-old Louis Silva was like, this is how I got to get here. This is what's going to stop my career in pro wrestling. It's in New Jersey. It's not even that far from us, right?
Right.
Me trying to figure out how I'm going to get my parents' car to do this and money. So, obviously that didn't go through, right? But then heard it through the grapevine. I'm not sure where. I must have read it somewhere in a newspaper because I also used to read the Fall River Tribune, and I might be butchering the name. It might not have been called the Fall River Tribune, but Sandy Starr used to write in the Tribune. She had an article, and I would pick it up from Shaw's every week that, I would go to Shaw's and I'd pick it up and I'd read her section. And I was like, everything wrestling I was reading. Somewhere along those lines, it's kind of blurred right now because it's been a while. Yeah. There was a pro wrestling school in New Bedford. So now I'm like, oh man, this is a dream come true. I'm living in Fall River. You're damn right. I'm going to drive to New Bedford a couple of times a week to get some training. So, back in the day, so I drive there. I think I went there alone to check it out. And I go there. It's like, I think it was like behind this huge like supermarket. It might have been like a Value Mart or something, right?
Yep.
So, like there's directions to go behind the building, and there's like crates and work trucks, and like it's kind of dark out because it's like 6 p.m. at night. It's kind of shady. It's New Bedford, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
So driving around there, I'm like, this is freaking badass. Like I can't wait to see what I'm getting myself into. Totally legit. So you park in the back. There's like an open back door where like you would think a truck would back into and unload groceries. And you kind of peek around, and there was like a freaking huge wrestling ring to like the left, and like some people doing dumb shit off to the right, probably. And, I go in there and I'm checking it out. And I remember Brickhouse Baker being there. That one I just checked out. The next time I went, because they told me since I was 17, I could not do this. I needed a parent to sign off on this because I wasn't 18 yet.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I'll be back like as soon as I can. When will you be here? And at the time I was, this was going to be for a pro wrestling company called Yankee Pro Wrestling, which a lot of old school New England fans do know Yankee Pro Wrestling. And it used to be owned by a man named Joe Eugenio. So Joe Eugenio was there. Brickhouse Baker was there. I want to say a young Tex McCoy was there. Travis Funk was definitely there because he gave me the stink eye of plenty. You know what I'm saying? At the time, of course, we're friends on Facebook now. It's no, I was a green kid. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, yeah. So I come back with my mother, and somehow I talked my mom into going along with this all week. And she was like, no, I'm absolutely not signing off on this. Not doing it, not doing it, not doing it. Somehow I told her it was going to be all right. And I signed off on it. I had saved some money because I was working at the time. And I paid a fee so they could start training me. And at the time, it was like, don't discuss this because I'm assuming everybody's fee was different. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, hey, we're going to charge you. Everything was done, like cash money. So it's like, okay, your mom came, you signed off, give me the money, and we're going to start training you. I want you to come, 2, 3, whatever it was, times a week. And, we're going to beat your ass. We're going to mold you into it. And so it began.
And was Brickhouse the only trainer there, or were there other trainers as well?
So I say guys like Tex were there, Travis Funk were there, because they were, I wouldn't say trainers, but they were definitely helping out. You know what I mean? You know how usually in a wrestling school, you get the guy who kind of like does more than the rest. And he kind of eventually starts becoming a trainer in a way. Excuse me, that's my cat. Sorry.
That's all right.
Zach. So at that, all I can remember, and Jose Perez was there as well, too. Jose Perez was there as well. Shortly after that, I want to say like the next month or maybe within weeks, a friend of mine, which you know as Striker, started wrestling. And that class, of him and I, amongst others, I think we're the only two that from that era that went on to actually go through in the business for more than 3-6 months. We actually, like, I did I think 6 or 7 years total, and he did a lot more than I did. So,
and when you debuted for Yankee Pro Wrestling, who were some of the most helpful people that kind of took you under their wing and kind of showed you the way?
Brickhouse Baker, always number one. That guy never judged me. That guy knew I was a freaking, he knew I was a rook. He knew I was green as hell. I did some dumb shit in pro wrestling. You know what I'm saying? Like dumb moves that I shouldn't be doing. My timing was off. This dude never once, at least not to my face, never once made fun of me, freaking put me down. He was Brickhouse Baker 24/7, like to everybody. So he always gave me as much positive criticism as he could. And I always feared that guy, until we wrestled, right? I always had a fear of Brickhouse because he was the trainer and like the dude was never like mad, he was just always like, go, go, go. And he was a beast in the ring. He would take a turnbuckle like nobody else, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I was always kind of intimidated by Brickhouse, as kind as he was to me. So he was, the full-time trainer. And then guys like Tex McCoy would help, but then they kind of like, they couldn't make it all the time. So other guys would fill in. Those Johnny Idol at the time was coming in and helping a lot. I remember who was this dude's name? Mike Steele. Do you remember Mike Steele? I'm sure, of course, you do.
Yeah, Mike.
Every time I hear that song, ding 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 ding. Every time I hear it, I think of Mike Steele. So those guys were in there, and I was brand new. So this was very like exciting because I was a cocky 17-year-old kid, and they could smell that. The guys training me could smell that I was green and I was pompous, Yeah.
Well,
I have no shame saying it. I smartened up after, but when I first was in there, it was really like, oh yeah, I deserved it,
Yeah, that's fine. So for the fans who aren't familiar with you that are, tuning into this podcast, why don't you give us the evolution of Luis Silva? Kind of give us the different gimmicks you've had over the years, what they meant to you and what you wanted them to mean to the fans, and even go into detail as far as the gear that you would wear for each gimmick, maybe the entrance music you would use.
Sounds good, dude. My first gimmick, my first 2 matches, one was at the PAL Battle Royal, and the second one the next week was at the Boys Club. Bro, that match at the Boys Club, I thought I was a rock star. I'm like, I get to wrestle in front of it seemed like, 2,000 people. And I was like, this is my second match ever. So I was just Luis Silva, my first 2 matches. My real name, Luis Silva. When we wrestled in Fall River, I was Luis Silva from New Bedford. When we wrestled in New Bedford, I was Luis Silva from Fall River.
Yeah.
So, and I had a blue singlet that I had gotten from the Swansea Mall at what was it? What was that store? Olympia. And luckily they had one my size. This blue Kurt Angle, ugly, I'm this, skinny dude. So those are my first 2 matches. First 2 matches with Battle Royal with a bunch of guys. I remember Hugo Kamikaze, what was his gimmick name at
Kevin
that time?
Charisma.
Kevin Charisma, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He was altitude at that time. He was altitude at that time. He threw me out of the Battle Royal, I think. So anyway, the next week I had a match with Johnny Idol, who was a pleasure to deal with. So it was Louis Silva versus Johnny Idol for the lightweight championship. I'm like, yeah, this is great. So good match. He carried the whole freaking thing, of course. Thinking about it now. So shortly after that, they were telling me, you need to do something. We need a gimmick for you. What do you want to do? We should put some tights on you and we should do this. And I'm like, I don't think my body is, built enough. I just started working out and I don't think I'm confident in tights, right? So at the time, grunge was popular. Raven, all that grunge apparel, like freaking the jean shorts cut off, the cut off black tees, silly necklaces. No, I shouldn't say this silly. You know what I'm saying? Would I wear them now? Absolutely not. But like that was really popular at that time. So I was like, hey, why don't we do I guess it's a gimmick. Why don't we just do, instead of Louis Silva, why don't we just make this guy called Suicidal Silva? With my intention being start emulating the style of a high flyer with technicality in it,
Sure.
Yeah, ask me that way. You know what I mean?
Well, we all start somewhere,
We all start somewhere. You're absolutely right. So I did that gimmick. And it's funny because I think I did that for probably almost a year. And that was a rough year for me. That was a really rough year for me, meaning I was, getting started in wrestling with a goal, a dream of making it to the WWF, WWE, right? That was my goal. And I'm trying to figure that out. I'm going through my first real breakup in life with my ex-girlfriend at the time. So that's messing with my mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that whole year of Suicidal Silva was just garbage. And these guys used to know how green I was in YPW and Yankee Pro Wrestling. So they'd go in there and they'd freaking, we all know it's an art, right? But you can go in there and you can twist a little harder and you can hit a little harder and you can slam a little harder. And those guys would do that to me. They would try and beat my ass for real in the ring. I remember one time, if you want to hear a specific story, he'll say no, but I've called him out on it. And this is true. It was me versus Tex. And I was still Suicidal Silva. And we were supposed to do something where Johnny Idol was going to come and do a run-in. So, no, it was vice versa. I was having a match with maybe Steve Ramsey in New Bedford. Tex was going to do a run-in to set up a match for us. This dude, I overhear him telling Steve Ramsey, hey, make sure you do this because I want to be in there so I can lay it to him a little longer. And I'm watching this dude talk to this guy say this, Tex McCoy.
Yeah.
So he kind of thinks I heard him. So I'm staring at this motherfucker. And he comes over to me and sits next to me. And I'm like, I heard what you said. I'm this green 17-year-old kid. I'm about, I could probably get my ass whooped right now. I'm like, I heard what you said. I was so I can't believe this dude just did this in front of me. Yeah. He's like, what are you talking about? I was like, you just told him to do A, B, and C so you can keep me in there a little longer and beat my ass a little longer. And he was like, nah, baby, I never said that. I never did that. I was like, no, you did. So regardless, we did the match. He did the run-in, and he didn't beat me any further than he should have. And, we became really good friends after all that anyway. So
Nice.
So after a year about Suicidal Silva, there came another dude by the name of Rage. Eric Rage, who used to wear a mask, and I became really close. We were kind of the same weight. We had the same goals at that time. And this is when I was starting. I was still Suicidal Silva, but I had changed my look of my gimmick. Because when I started, I was doing that grunge, cut-off jeans, a freaking black T-shirt that I found at Hot Topic that had the Superman S logo, and I cut the sleeves, keeping the S for Suicidal Silva, right? And I had these black Army combat boots that I found at the Army Navy store on South Main Street in Fall River. So those were my wrestling boots. That was my wrestling attire. And I used to have, some knee pads that I found at Olympia. So my wrestling attire, I'd go out there green as hell and just, try and learn my craft as best as I could. I was a hot shit at that time. And those guys definitely would show me. And they all wanted to take their opportunity to, kind of beat me if they could, kind of really. So I understand that the business is that way. And I don't know if it still is, but I didn't hold anybody I don't hold it against anybody. I knew what I was getting myself into, you know.
Yeah.
So as I started working with Rage, they put us together for the lightweight. They had given me the lightweight strap in Yankee Pro Wrestling, and I was still Suicidal Silva. It was coming towards the end of what I wanted to be. I was getting sick of the name. I didn't like it. I wanted to stray away from that. So I started changing my look. I got these, like, again, back at Hot Topic. I started getting more confident, so I took my shirt off because I was starting to work out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was able to wrestle without a shirt. I had these pants that were kind of like these pleather, shiny. They were kind of like stuff that, if you remember Kid Cash, the dude from ECW, am I saying his name right?
Yeah.
He had these like pants that I got as well that were similar.
Okay.
I had a black pair and a silver pair, right? And I started changing my look to that. I didn't know what I was changing my look to. I just knew I was trying to do something other than this unprofessional, in my eyes, look of a wrestler. You know, wrestlers shouldn't be wearing, in my opinion, a pro wrestler should not be wearing jean shorts and a cutoff t-shirt. I'm sorry, it doesn't look the part. It worked for Raven. It works for some people. It's not like my style. So I started wearing the pants, the knee pads underneath, the boots still tucked in. I got some money. I ended up buying some real wrestling boots from the God rest his soul, Nick Steele, who sold me a pair for like $250. And I was ecstatic because these were my first pair of wrestling boots ever. You know, they were legitimate wrestling boots. They would have the nice little lift. They were black and shiny. They were, you know, I really love those things. Yeah. So I started becoming that. Eric and I, Rage and I, worked a wrestling, you know, a few matches. We did one at the Fisherman's Club in New Bedford. We did one at the Main Street Armory. We did a few at PAL. We had this little back and forth feud for a little while, going for the Yankee Pro Wrestling lightweight title. So I started changing my style, my characters. So then, you know, they gave the belt to Rage, which is fine. I kind of went silent. I don't think they were using me as much, and I don't remember who the booker was at the time of Suicidal Silva. I know Silvano Souza was at the time when I got the strap, because Silvano Souza was very fond of me, and he decided that putting the Yankee Pro Wrestling lightweight strap was a great idea. That didn't sit well for the likes of people like the Highlight Kid, who did not think that I deserved that title at the time. And again, I don't hold any fault to anybody. This is just life. Like, you know, he did have a problem with that, and we did get into a scuffle, like legitimate scuffle, and we did not like each other for a long period of time. But, you know, life happens, and you grow up, and you kind of realize that that's just nonsense, man. That's just nonsense, because I really have no beef with you, and I hope that I don't think he's got beef with me now after all these years. I mean, we both moved on in life. But, you know, it's funny what we get mad about back in the day. We're not even getting paid. We're getting this, like, sheet metal championship belt, you know, and we're like, "Argh." But I get it. We're all trying to make it. We're all just trying to make it. So, the new booker came in. Silvano had left, and it was like, I think it was like May time. And I had just freshly broken up from a bad relationship. And I was like, you know, the spring was coming. It was like May time. Yeah, I remember this. And Kevin Castro became the booker for YPW. I don't think they had done the split yet with SCCW. And I had pitched this idea to him at a show, because I heard he was going to be the booker. And I was at a show doing my regular Suicidal Silva. And I was like, you know what would be a great gimmick? And he was like, what? I was like, we should do a boy band. We should do something where, because boy bands were hot, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, they were hot at the time. I was like, how badass would it be if we could get a heel, somebody to go out there, dance like these guys do, and just be a cocky little shit. The guys will hate him. The girls will love him. He's like, that's a really good idea. And, you know, I've never thought anything of it, right? So we go to, we have a show at the PAL. And I still got my Suicidal, end of the transition Suicidal Silva pants, you know, the pleather ones I was telling you about. Yeah. And I get to the locker room early. You know, I do my handshakes to everybody. It's a lovely evening out at the PAL. Like, it's beautiful. Those are some fond memories. Like, the sun's going down, you know, you get fans out there, like, they believe in you. And I walk into the PAL, and Kevin Castro's in charge. And I'm like, what's up? He goes, what's up? He goes, you ready? I was like, ready. He goes, you ready? Ready for what? You ready to do that gimmick? I was like, are you serious, dude? He's like, yeah, absolutely. I was like, yeah. It was like 4 p.m. I had gotten there early. I was like, give me like 30 minutes. I jumped in my car. I went to the Harbor Mall at the time, went to Record Town, bought the No Strings Attached album by NSYNC. and I had it in my head. I'm going to come out to bye bye bye. Everybody knows the beginning of it. When the words, when that part hits, I'm going to come
Yeah.
out, and this is what I'm going to make my intro music to. And we did it. I had the same gear as I did as Suicidal Silva that night. So it was just pants, no shirt, and we had the music. And I had my buddy at the time, Bruen, who's Julius Sweet. He was my manager. So because I had pitched that idea to Kevin Castro as well, and he went with it, and we both went out that night. So I had the Nokia phone, and I think I had Brian give his phone to somebody, and we went out there and cut a promo with my new gimmick and had a match. So we went out there. I did this, and I was on the mic, who I am now, and who I blah blah blah, and blah all the girls and this and that. And then I had somebody call my phone, and I answered it, and I was like, "Yep, I'll be right there. No worries." I hung up, and then I got on the mic, and I was like, "That was Britney Spears," and blah blah, and the crowd ate it up, really ate it up. So I went, and then that's how the heartthrob Lance Silva gimmick was born.
Okay.
So yeah, and we that we can go into more because then my look changed completely. You know what I mean? So from the heartthrob, I started getting really really popular in New England at that time. For Yankee Pro Wrestling voted me most popular of the year. Tag team of the year was Shaw Candido. I was really hot at that time in that little area of New England. It was a cool thing to experience. It was a cool thing. What a pop every time. Eventually, boy band stopped fizzling out. Right. And so does Heartthrob Lance Silva. So now I'm like, all right, this is getting kind of sickening because, now it turned into opposite. I became like a tweener in a way because I freaking had the guys hating me. Then they shifted and they liked me. And I'm like, this isn't the way it's supposed to be working. You know what I'm saying? So as boy bands faded, I decided I was a heel at the time still. And I believe that's when they had that shift from Yankee Pro Wrestling and that split to SCCW, kind of like with SmackDown and Raw. And coincidentally, it was around the same time. So we had a draft and we sent guys over to YPW and we sent people over to SCCW. And I had been chosen to go to SCCW. They had kept a lot of the senior guys in YPW, rightfully so. I'd been around longer. They could probably hold the company better. And they had brought me over to SCCW, which was a whole new world for me because I had a lot more lighter weight guys, not as bigger guys. Big guys, they were what's his name? The guy that he used to manage me, Mark. The heck was his name? He was this jack dude. Mark
Chambers?
Mark Damon.
Oh, Mark. Okay.
So he was a pretty big dude. We had Johnny Angel, those guys in SCCW. So my, bye gimmick, because I learned that dance as best I could. I bought the VHS, New York concert of NSYNC, and I learned that intro dance as best I could. So that would get me a lot of heat. We go on road shows at the time. People would be like, who the hell is this guy? But they would pop for me just because of the sound, the song, and then I'd come out and I would wear I got really into it. I'd wear headbands, I'd wear sequin shirts, I'd do the little dance, I'd go in the ring, I'd really play up the crowd. That was a time that I really learned to play a crowd. And I'll tell you something else, Joe, that time when I developed, so you see, I told you where I was kind of getting stale with the suicidal gimmick, right? Yeah. At that time, the dudes in YPW were finally starting to accept me as who I was. It had taken about a year to be accepted as one of the boys in the Yankee Pro Wrestling locker room. Those guys, they had their fair share of harassments and initiations, right? So after about a year, and I know the turning point where I became one of the boys, and we have it, of course, not on camera. It was a match. It was my first and only singles match with Brickhouse Baker, and I believe it was in Adams, Massachusetts, at this high school. We had a ring. We went in there. We had planned this match. We had talked this match out completely, and we get in there. And Chicken, you remember Chicken? Tom Mello, he was the referee for that match.
Yeah.
He was. So we went in there. No more than I think the match had just rang the bell. I just shot Baker off we tied up. We tied up, and I did something, and I shot him off the rope. We were about to do this spot so I shot him off the rope. The top rope snaps. He, as Brickhouse Baker would, the veteran he is, goes over with the rope, cleverly, of course. And I'm like, this is my time to shine. This has never happened to me before. where I've got to improvise now. You know what I'm saying? So instinctively, I'm comfortable because throughout this time, I told you I was intimidated by Brickhouse Baker, but we had become really close friends. We had traveled on the road, we had hung out, so we become a lot closer than when we first were when I obviously started pro wrestling. So I was so confident with Brickhouse Baker at this time that he was out there and he was in the where you would come out if the wrestler's coming out of the dressing room, you know that area. So
Yeah.
he's out there because I'm about to do this high spot. I need plenty of room for him to catch me. You know what I'm saying? So the
Right.
top rope snaps. The whole point was for me to go up to the top rope and somersault onto Baker. So it didn't happen. Top rope snapped. That stayed down. The referee's like, "Oh shit, what?" And I go like this to the ref. I go, "Bro, check this out. This is a perfect time to shine." Baker was outside the ring looking, and it's like we kind of read each other's mind. And I just ran and obviously cleared that second rope with probably the most perfect somersault I'd ever hit anybody with. Baker took it, boom, put me on my feet. He took the bump. I played it up to the crowd. So we had the point of this I'm getting is that match went 20 minutes long, about 19, 20 minutes. And we did everything with two ropes, the middle rope and the bottom rope. Even to my finisher, which was a simulation of like the acid drop. We did that beautifully, executed the whole match excellently. That was the first time in my life in pro wrestling that when I came to the back, I got a standing ovation from the boys in the locker room.
Yeah.
I'd never gotten that. I was this punk kid, yada, yada, yada. These guys gave me a standing ovation. And that was, I can tell you honestly, that the moment I believe I was accepted as one of the boys in the Yankee Pro Wrestling locker room.
Nice. And sometimes it takes time like that. You got to prove yourself, essentially,
It's called, like anything else, bro, it's growth. And you have to want to get better at things in life to continue to be that person you want to be.
And let's talk about Bruen a little bit, your manager, Mr. Sweet. How did you guys meet? How did you get him involved? Or did you get him involved? Was he already involved? And kind of give us that little background of Mr. Sweet.
Bruen and I, we have been friends since high school. And we were in a vocational school in Fall River, Massachusetts called Diamond Regional Technical Vocational High School. I think I missed the name there, but we were both in plumbing shop. And I was a year ahead of him. So I graduated in 99. He graduated in 2000. I was already in wrestling in 99. Like I was wrestling in my senior year of high school. And I remember, we'd always been fans of pro wrestling. Like we became friends probably because, pro wrestling. So we always talk like you could be my manager and blah, 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 like just they do. And the first person to give us that opportunity was actually you, Joe, at your Hardcore Wrestling Federation. So that, remember that match? And it was in Rhode Island. It was myself and Vertebraker. And that was a show that had like the 15 matches, bro. Yeah. Do you remember? So it's me, Vert, and then, like Derek Destiny came out, and then Miss Julia Sweet came out. And then it was like, I had won that match. So Vertebraker, I don't think was too happy about that. So he's like, Joe, we're going to make a tag match with Vert, me and Derek, with Derek Destiny, Vert versus Suicidal Silva and Mr. Sweet. Of course, they went over on us because, whatever. You got to do what you got to do. Do what you got to do to make you happy, dude. You know what I'm saying? Nothing. Vert is a good dude. We follow each other on Facebook. I haven't seen that dude in years. But, yeah, you were the first one. So that, started the Mr. Sweet. So then we took Bruen back to Yankee Pro Wrestling, and we were like, yeah, this is what it is. And they were like, okay, we'll use him. Eventually, they started using him for other wrestlers, too. Like, I think he managed Colossus at some time. At least on road shows, they would put him with Colossus, Big Daddy Kahuna, Scott Ashworth, probably Brickhouse Baker, too.
Yeah. I didn't realize that was his first appearance. That's great. The HWF for me, was a way to just another venue to get into the business on another level, and promoting, was something I was always into. Obviously, never had done it at that point. So I did 8 spot shows from 1999 to 2001. That show with Mr. Sweet was my very first show. So that was 1999, September 10th, I remember. And it was
That's
called
awesome.
Ring.
I remember you were like, this is my first show. I want you to be on it. And I was like, what a great connect to have in the wrestling business, Joe Bruen. Absolutely.
And, I like to try to get different guys from all different areas. So I kind of had, workers from different promotions, because lots of times they're there just wouldn't be a lot of crossover, because everybody was so, hey, you can't wrestle there, you can't wrestle there, So I kind of
Dude,
had a mix, which was unique.
it was unique. It was something like we could see like the New England stars from every area. Because like you said, we were prohibited. We weren't under contract or anything in Yankee Pro Wrestling, but it was frowned upon to go work elsewhere.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to. They're like, how can we trust you to be our champion if you're going to go out and go lose to somebody else? And I'm like, I understand that, but like, if they're gonna pay me, freaking not a lot. I mean, not like I ever got paid a ton in wrestling, right? But like, and you guys don't, why wouldn't I go do this? You know what I'm saying? And why wouldn't I go get exposed to other fans that don't see me and all that good stuff?
Right. And I remember, different things happened. It was just a little rough. There was a Limp Bizkit concert, and he was huge at the time at the Providence Civic Center. And of course, it was the same night as my show, only 10 minutes away. I'm like, oh,
Oh,
man.
really?
So that obviously, that was sold out there. And then we got a terrible storm. I don't know if you remember. And
I
so
think I
much
do.
rain, and the ring was late. Therefore, the show was late. And like you said, there were a lot of matches because I had guys from all different promotions. So it was a
They were
long
ready to
night.
work.
Yeah, yeah. It was good though. Good memories, and you'd go on to continue with HWF for a little while there. You had a hardcore match with TJ Richter in
Yeah,
2000. You'd work
and,
Jose Perez in a hardcore match as well.
dude,
What are some of your
that was
memories
a
working
rough.
with TJ and working with Jose?
Oh, dude. So TJ was really kind always to me. So I never had an issue with TJ. TJ and I, but we didn't really know each other. So I guess he was as professional as he could be. Let me plug my computer in real quick if you don't mind.
Yeah,
So I never had any issues with TJ Richter. I'd worked him a couple of times before in Power League Wrestling.
right.
So he was on your show. I had no issues working him, and he was easy to work with. I do remember probably like suffering, probably like it was a hardcore match. So it's like there's a lot of things I probably wouldn't do now if I ever would have a hardcore match. Not that I ever will, right? But like there's certain like hits I wouldn't take. You know what I mean? So, and then I think was it a year later I had your show with Jose Perez, maybe about a year, maybe a few months, obviously difference. And Jose took me like that was his hardcore wrestling was really popular at the time,
Yeah,
and New Jack was really popular, the Gangsters, and obviously ECW. So Jose was getting to be was known at the time as like the hardcore king in New England. At least in my what I thought he was. He was like he had wrestled New Jack and they had become friends. So I was like, oh, so new Jose. We wrestled in a hardcore match. Like he freaking whooped my freaking ass in that match. Like he definitely whooped my ass. But he this was Suicidal Silva days.
yeah.
At the end of the match, because Julius Sweet was my manager there, I got my ass freaking whooped in that match, and I was hurting. He was like, I'm gonna shake your hand. I got on the mic and he was like, I'm gonna shake your hand. I don't know if you remember this, Joe. And he's like, because you just took that ass whooping from me, and anybody can do that. I respect him. And I was like, I don't trust this fucking guy. Like, he's probably going to whoop my ass. Like, we didn't talk about this. You know what I'm saying? And you just whooped my ass in this ring for like 20 minutes, dude. And now you're over here want to shake my hand. I didn't know if he was real or not. So I'm like, so I asked him, I'm like, are you going to fucking hit me or something, dude? He's like, no, no, no. On the mic, right? Because I'm really thinking this dude's going to shoot on me because he just whooped my ass for 20 minutes, bro. So then he was like, no, no, no. My word is as good as gold, blah, blah, blah. And then at the time I was dating some floozy at the time, and he had pointed at her and was like, and said something, he said, I respect you, but he's like, but don't be surprised if I take your girl out of some schnaz like that. So yeah, and that's my I never wrestled Jose after that. I don't think I've ever wrestled TJ Richter after that. So
Oh wow. Okay.
yeah, that's probably it.
All
I don't,
right.
I'm, yeah, I don't think maybe TJ Richter. I don't know. Maybe I don't think so though. I think that was all before with like Power League and stuff.
Yeah. And then the year 2000 for SCCW, there'd be a tag team match, the Vertebreaker and Derek Destiny against yourself and Stryker, the Military Wrecking Crew. Tell us how that came together. Obviously, you trained, at the same time. You guys were friends, like you said. But how did that team come together?
Bro. I think we wrestled at a bar. It was like a pub, right? And it was
Yeah.
a ladder match, dude.
Uh-huh.
I'm pretty sure it was. And the ladder was like 5 feet tall, bro, because the ceiling was like right here,
Right.
dude. So we had a ladder match in like a regular, and they were like, "Do you have any military gear?" These are the booker at the time, who I forgot. I think the guy's name probably was like Tony or something.
Mm.
He's like, "Do you have any military gear?" And I was like, "No, I don't." And he's like, "Well, you got to find some, blah blah blah. I want you to look military because I'm going to put you and Stryker together, and you guys are going to be like the military wrecking crew." I was like, "Okay," and he's like, "It's just going to be for like road shows, okay?" And I was like, "All right." And we did that, and we came out to like that military music, and I was like, "This is so weird," because, and I get that's with pro wrestling. If you want to like make it, you just kind of got to go with the flow, but it was just so random. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was definitely a sign of like them trying something new and it not working at all
Right.
because they were trying to get Stryker was here's what it was. Stryker at the time was getting popular. Those were the end of the suicidal days with suicidal Silva days with the shorts. So I'm like they're trying to figure out what the hell to do with me. Stryker was actually gaining popularity with he was like hometown hero, and his gimmick was of like military. He was Stryker. He used to dress in like commando. So they threw me with him, thinking that it would hopefully work. And honestly, I'm glad it did not. Nothing against Stryker. Stryker and I have remained friends for many, many years. It was just not my style, like gimmick. Thank goodness. You know what I mean? It's just not who I am. And yeah, that's pretty much it on that one.
Memories like that, though. You remember specific matches and
I do, yeah. Especially Joe, when people bring them to light, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
yeah,
Dude. I remember a time where you remember Tim Towers, right?
Big Tim Towers.
Big Tim Towers, right? That dude was always like standoffish. He was never nice to me, right?
Oh, really?
He wasn't mean to me. Let me rephrase. He was never mean to me, but the one interaction I did have with him, it wasn't really pleasant.
Yeah.
So we were at I can't Taunton. Anyway, who was there? Georgie Animal Steel, I think, was there, and I don't
That
know.
might have been the Roseland Ballroom.
That's it, bro.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
So me and what was the Jack kid who used to Andy Jacks? What was his partner?
Andy Jackson.
Kappa Tappa Kega, whatever they were
Yeah,
called.
yeah, absolutely.
Kurt Daniels or something.
Kurt
What was his name?
Yeah, I think
Right?
so. Yeah.
So him and I, we were kind of friends. So we'd hang out in the dressing room. He's a big Jack kid. I was trying to get like him. And it was the Rosen Ballroom. And we were like just being like teenage kids, I guess. Like, we were being immature. We were throwing shit out the window. And we were like fucking with people outside the window because we had our match. So we were in the dressing room just fucking with people outside, right?
Yeah.
I guess the owner or whoever's running the Rosen Ballroom at the time went to Joe and was like, whoever is throwing shit, you guys are responsible and blah, 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 blah. So Joe was pissed. Joe Eugenio was pissed. And he was like, I don't know who's doing it, but nobody's getting paid until I find out. So Tim Towers comes up to me. He goes, come here. Actually, he was sitting. He goes, come here. And I was like, yep. He goes, is that you throwing that shit out the window? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, you better go fucking fix it. And I want to get paid. I'm going to rip your fucking head off.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa. So, needless to say, we all got paid, some more than others, and that was my only interaction with Big Tim Towers.
Man, Tim Towers, he definitely had the look. I guess maybe he didn't have the attitude, but he left pretty quickly, just as quick as he arrived. I don't remember.
Yeah, guys like
him again.
who I've thought about before, like that also were in that same boat, like Trooper Lawson. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, Trooper Lawson, absolutely. Yeah.
I think the last years ago, I heard he went to like Miami or something. I don't know. We all have our own path. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Came out to the Cops theme song.
That's him, bro.
Yeah.
I wrestled him a few times as well.
Any memories of the late Lucian Bagwell?
Yeah, actually, Lucian Bagwell was he had started pro wrestling probably a few months before I did. He had started training in the Yankee Pro Wrestling School of Wrestling. So this dude, when I first met him, we were in practice, and I'm like, this is fucking Buff Bagwell. This dude looks just like Buff Bagwell. I'm like, is he related to him? They already were making him a star in Yankee Pro Wrestling because of his look. I mean, look, they gave him the last name Bagwell, right? So they were trying to capitalize, and it was working because the chicks were digging him. He was always very kind to me. His name was Jerry. He never, ever, ever was mean to me, never condescending. Always said hello, he shook my hand. We never wrestled a match because I guess there was nothing, unless they were going to squash me probably at the time. But no, other than that, nothing crazy.
A lot of
Nothing
big
crazy.
guys, obviously, at that time. Yankee Pro Wrestling,
There
Reverend
was.
Redemption, Big
Yep.
Daddy Kahuna,
Yep.
Colossus.
Colossus.
As you mentioned, Big Tim Towers. Any memories of some of those big guys? You ever work with
Rick
them or
Fuller. Rick Fuller
Big
was
Rick
going back
Fuller?
and forth between Atlanta at the time, WCW, and Yankee Pro Wrestling, and the New England companies out here. I was deathly afraid to wrestle Rick Fuller because I had heard horror stories about his vicious chop, and I'm like, if that dude gets me in the ring, he is for sure going to chop the shit out of me, and I'm not looking forward to it. So luckily, I never got into the ring with him, but he was always cool. I was always taught in pro wrestling, when you get into any pro wrestling locker room, the first thing you do is you go and you shake everybody's hand, you see how everybody's doing, and then you can sit down and you can get ready what you got to. It doesn't matter if you're running late. It doesn't matter if you're early. You go do what you got to do, because those are the people who are going to hopefully be there for you. Just show everybody respect that you would want. So I'd always go do that. So Rick Fuller would be there, and I'd go ahead and I'd shake his hand, and he always say hello, and that was the extent of that. But guys like the Power Company, they were also going back and forth from WCW to New England companies. Power Company at one time. So there was a time in the heartthrob Lance Silva's career where he became very, very popular, and he teamed up with Sean Candido, superstar Sean Candido,
Yep.
and we were like tag champs for like the whole year, and we were wicked popular. And we were wrestling all over Massachusetts, everywhere. Maine, we were going everywhere. Rhode Island. And we had to wrestle the freaking Power Company. And these guys were it was my first time wrestling these guys. And I was like, at first it's intimidating because these guys are all, juiced the heck up, right? And they're like, I've heard of horror stories where they kind of flip the match or they kind of get mad at each other. So I'm going in, and these guys are planning the whole match. I'm just sitting there like, okay. Luckily, just kidding, I say luckily, but I had to take the entire heat of the match. I took the entire beat down of the match, and these dudes beat the shit out of me, of course. These guys were really they thought wherever they worked, they were going to work WCW style. And that's cool because that gave me a little taste of that, right? But I remember this dude, I was outside the ring hitting Dean or Dave, whichever one it was, right? And I'm punching him, and he goes, hit me harder, you fucking pussy. And I was like, that is the first time somebody's ever said something like that to me in a match. So I was like, all right, motherfucker. I started as wailing on him as best as I could. I gave it back to him. And yeah, they were a tough bunch because they would end up bickering with each other during the call. They would call the whole match. They would call the entire match in the dressing room. And they would end up fighting themselves, like arguing of like who's going to do what and what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, they definitely had the look, and they had, like you said, the style. They obviously worked at WCW style, and I always loved obviously they bickered in real life, but I always loved their, banter back and forth, gimmick wise, and hugging each other, and
Right. They kind of had that where they did some innuendo. You know what I mean? They
yeah.
right, totally, absolutely
Yeah.
worked very well for them.
It was a lot of fun, and pissed the crowd off, and yeah, just good times right there. Now, all these promotions you've worked for, do you have a favorite if you had to pick one?
I'm gonna say my favorite probably was South Coast Championship Wrestling.
Yeah.
That was the final heartthrob Lance Silva. That was the one that I got to be at that time in my life, me. So I was a heel at that time, and although I wasn't a heel in real life, I'm a pretty likable guy in my opinion. In that, I had this character in mind where I was this cocky, confident, cool, and I went out there and they gave me the Coastal Championship for like almost a year, and I had Mark Damon as my what was he? He was my manager, but it was like a more clever name, And he was like the SCCW director, so he had this rule book. It was like some encyclopedia, and I would only every match that I had, it was under South Coast rules to defend the South Coast Coastal Championship. So we'd have to have, it's like you can't throw. It was like old WCW style. You can't throw over the top rope, things like that.
Yeah.
So I would always end up like the guy would win, right? My opponent would win the match, and then Mate would come out and be like, no. Rule, no. Paragraph A on page 193 says this. And then we're like, nope, restart the match. And then I would do something illegal because he'd be distracted. Or like I'd throw him over the top rope and I go beat his ass real quick and throw him in and put my feet on the ropes and beat him
Yeah.
and keep him going, you know? So that was and I also got rid of the pleather pants and I had like shorts, you know, like regular, like tight shorts,
Yep.
knee pads. I actually looked in my opinion at the time, like a pro wrestler would look. So that was my favorite era of Heartthrob Lance Silva. I also changed my music a few times. The first time when I was Suicidal Silva, I came out to White Zombie, Thunder Kiss, 1965, great. You know, I just heard that song today. It's still, you know, a classic in for me. It will forever hold a place in my heart. And then I moved to the Bye 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 song because it was part of my gimmick. And then after that, I did Van Halen's Pound Cake. Now, some will argue that that is Van Hagar with Sammy Hagar. And I do know that I'm not a fan of Sammy Hagar, Van Halen, but the song sounded badass because it had like a drill in the beginning. And I thought it was a perfect for me with an entrance song. Because that was another thing I was struggling with. I'm not going to come out to Bye 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 anymore. I'm like trying to be this more badass, like cocky, not boy band. I'm trying to get out of that. So I came out, I just switched the song to that.
Any memories of Chris Blackheart or the Punisher Don Vega?
Was always such a kind dude. He was always funny. He always had a great attitude. Chris Blackheart would always eat oatmeal before every single match. Every single match he'd have his oatmeal. And I think he did it to kind of give him his energy, right? We'll say this. Before every single match, Chris Blackheart used to always have to take a dump. Every single match. And I don't know if he was coming from work or whatever it may be, but he was definitely ready to use the bathroom every time before he had his match.
Ready to go.
Ready to go.
Now, how about the Punisher Don Vega?
Punisher Don Vega, I've known him since I started training for Yankee Pro Wrestling, and his dad as well. His dad was around for many, many years. Richie Don Vega, he is very, very, at least from what I've known, very quiet, very reserved, very to himself. When his father was with us, he would often be the voice of Richie. Julio would be the man to kind of guide him. I guess he was, in a way, he spoke for Richie in a way, but not in a sense where Richie isn't allowed to talk, but in a sense where I'm trying to get out of this. It was a positive thing. He was the voice of Richie. Richie has always been more reserved and he's always been more to himself, but he was always very, very kind. And he was always, always, always super professional. He is probably one of the most professional people I had ever worked with at that time in pro wrestling. I remember one time I was still Suicidal Silva. So we were training in the same ring, in New Bedford, in the back lot of Value, whatever the hell it was. And he would never take liberties on me. He would never take, go excess and hurt me if he just tried to help. He just tried to help. I remember we were doing a battle royal on some road show and, we were the last two in the battle royal and this crowd was hot. So, here's Richie, the true gentleman professional that he is. I'm Suicidal Silva in my shorts and my Superman cutoff T-shirt. He's like, but I was a face in that town, right? And he's the heel, and I did a basic somersault on him because he had thrown somebody out. He was playing up the crowd. Surprise! Here I come with a somersault from the top rope into the ring. Crowd went absolutely nuts with that simple move. So I'm like, awesome. Richie goes, get your heat. So I'm like, oh shit. Okay. So I get up, I go to the second rope, and people are freaking eating it up. And I'm like, wow, we can just imagine that, right? Yeah. So even though, these guys were brand new, but Richie had a different demeanor about him where, a lot of guys, most people, I think about this every now and then, a ton of guys, when I started, even when I became Heartthrob Lance Silva and they gave me belts and I was considered Louis Silva's pretty established here in Yankee Pro Wrestling. I would see people come and go because, it's not like we did any crazy training. The nature of the game is, okay, you went to work today, drive your ass to the ring. You're going to take bumps for about 2 hours. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. You're going to listen. You're going to watch other people. It's exhausting. And to do that every weekend, have a family, have a job, people fizzle out. So I saw so many different people fizzle out just in my short time of pro wrestling. But I've also met very professional people as well, and Richie definitely top class. Absolutely, absolutely.
Any memories of Frankie Armadillo or Mike Paiva?
Yeah, definitely. Frankie Armadillo, those guys would come down from Maine with Fandango, Johnny Curtis, and who's the young man who passed away in a car accident?
Oh, that was Damian Houston.
That's it. Yep, yep. Frankie Armadillo would come with them, and I just had a few matches with him. Very basic. We never really like hung out, talked. But who was the other person you asked?
Mike Paiva.
Yeah, Mike Pive and I had some. So Mike Pive and I had some real good matches, some real good lightweight matches. Again, that was at the end of the Suicidal Silva transition, where I was becoming a little bit better with in-ring cues and learning ring psychology. So I had like the pleather pants, but I even wrestled them in the pre-pleather pants days with the shorts for Suicidal Silva. And Mike Pive came around, and here comes this new young kid who can actually do these sort of karanas and do these backflips, where I'm trying to still learn these things, and I'm like, shit, this guy's gonna take my whatever limelight I think I'm getting, you know what I mean? But no issues ever with Mike Paiva. Mike Paiva was a great dude, and we had a lot of good matches. Actually, I would say we were always on the road. Like every single road show we would do, we would I feel like we'd have like a bunch of like 6-man tag lightweight this and that, because there was a ton of lightweights at the time. Armadillo, Mike Paiva, Rage, myself, guys like Johnny Idol had gone elsewhere at that time. They weren't even, it was a different era of Yankee Pro, beginnings of South Coast Championship Wrestling, I believe.
Now, when it comes to venues, PAL Hall, Fall River, Mass, we spoke about that. Such a unique venue. You have the balcony, just had a really cool feel. What were some of your favorite venues throughout your career?
Oh, dude, favorite venues. I'm going to tell you this. It was the PAL, because I went there as a kid to actually Greco-Roman wrestle in middle school. And knowing that, guys like PJ Walker, who were Aldo Montoya at the time, had been through this hall, and Scott Taylor had been through these halls. And, I'm like, I hope that I can do that and wrestle here one day. So you could imagine my first match at the PAL was that Battle Royal where altitude threw me out of the ring. I was like, Dad, you have to come to this. And he did. And I was like, the lights were shining in my face. There was like what an experience. And another one, my favorite one, was the Bank Street Armory. And again, this one, I would go to the Bank Street Armory, Joe, to watch WWF.
Yeah.
Right. I got Adam Bomb autograph. I got Monty Jannetty autograph there. I saw WWF stars in the 90s in the Bank Street Armory. And then ECW came around to the Bank Street Armory. And then I was wrestling. It was my turn to go to Bank Street Armory. And I'm like, this is a dream come true. This is a small goal of mine that I've achieved in my life. I tell people this, like sometimes I'll talk to my wife about this. And although I don't dwell on my, 6-7 year pro wrestling career, there was some great memories, dude, because like as a child, as a teenager, you're like, man, what I wouldn't give to wrestle at the Bank Street Armory in front of, I think, almost 5,000 people, me versus Rage, and in a tables match or something that we had. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is freaking awesome. Like I'm living out a childhood dream. And same thing with the PAL. I've taken a badass, the PAL balcony when the lightweights were popular at that time. They were using that balcony quite often, as you could probably imagine, to leap off of, right? So I had a match with Rage in the PAL. That was the match that transferred me over completely from Suicidal to Heartthrob Lance Silva. And the way we did that was I had tights underneath my pleather pants that on the back I had sewn on there said Heartthrob. So I was already going by like Heartthrob or something. So I had him actually like rip my pants off because it was like a hardcore match. You know what I'm saying? We used chairs and everything. So it was supposed to be this violent match. So I had shorts. You wrestling tight shorts, you know what I'm saying? So that's how I debuted that in my head. So the next time I came out for a match, it was no more pants. It was like, well, I might as well keep these now, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, leading up to that, we did this sick spot off the PAL balcony. We had, it was going to be a hardcore match. So we wanted to take a bump off the balcony through a table in the ring. So we got there early, Eric and I, Rage and I, and we asked ring crew if they could just move the ring, set it up a little bit this way, right?
Sure.
Because we were going to set up a table and we were looking up at the balcony and we were going to rock bottom he was going to give me a rock bottom off the balcony through a table. So
Wow.
we wanted that thing precise. So we were like, okay, I think if we set this motherfucker up here, we're going to be safe crashing down to this thing. So we asked the ring crew if they could move the ring, if they could set the ring up a little bit over here. And it was perfect. We did it. So we had gone up there the time before the show started, and we're like, yeah, it looks fine. It looks fine. I had agreed to this 3 weeks prior, not thinking anything of it, right? So I get there and we go over it, and we go up to the top of the balcony, and there's nobody there, and the ring's getting set up, and we're like, okay, this is how we're gonna do it, and I'm gonna turn around and take a rock bottom into the ring. So I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it. I went out in my truck at the time, and I started crying. I was like, I can't believe I agreed myself into this, because I'm gonna die. Like I'm gonna shatter everything. And it was smooth. It was
It was
smooth.
fine. It went
It's
okay.
fine. It's fine. Mike Foster, Thunder from Down Under, Mike Foster. He
Yeah.
was in the crowd at that time because he wasn't wrestling at the moment, but he was trying to get back into it. So he was kind of just being a fan, sitting in the crowd, watching us. And he said that was probably the sickest at the time bump he had ever seen anybody do. And watching it back on camcorder, it was like we hit and that table just exploded. It was a thing of beauty. It really was. It really was.
It's always nice when you get the payoff at the end, you know?
Yeah.
It looks good on paper, and sometimes it doesn't always pan out. So,
Isn't that the truth?
yeah. So let's talk about, when it comes to different promotions, obviously you're dealing with different promoters and stuff. You mentioned Silvana Souza as the booker at one time. What was it like working for Joe Eugenio?
Joe Eugenio was very easygoing to me. But Joe Eugenio, I kind of learned early on in the beginning of pro wrestling. Pro wrestling kind of molded me to like learn things about people and life and certain likes that people have and certain things that people want to see done and kind of like what money can do, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Now, I'm of course not going to like talk about anything like bad, but Joe Eugenio seemed at the time had some power. The dude never like had less than like $1,000 worth of cash in his pocket. And he would whip it out and it'd be this wad of cash, and he would just be sitting there with his Yankee Pro Wrestling sweatshirt on. But he was always very kind to me. And I will always be very grateful of that because he was the one who gave me a chance at working for a legitimate, at the time, a wrestling federation. He was always very kind to me. He was the one who pushed me to get rid of the shorts and cut off t-shirt and put on some tights. So did he want to see me in tights? Probably. Did he want to see me in tights for his own, who knows? Or did he want to see me in tights to better his company as a wrestler? Maybe both. But at the time, if that was the case, I may have had an inkling about that, but it didn't really matter to me because I know where I stand. And you're right. These tights will get me further in my career just by the way I look. So, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Other than that, he was a good dude.
In another promotion, we talked about SCCW, Bridgewater, Massachusetts, the year 2000. You would team up with the American Eagle, Shane Simons, and you'd go against the Damned. Any memories working with the Damned?
Yeah, actually, that's so funny. Shane Simons, I think we're friends on Facebook after like so many years. We've like just like reconnected, and yeah, that was another one where it was like, here's a rando team. It's like you and Strike in the military crew. Here's Shane Simons today, and you're going to be this,
Yeah.
And again, that was in like Bridgewater, another out of town experience. The Damned, I wrestled the Damned a few times, and I personally never had any issues with the Damned, but I don't think they had issues with me. But will I say, did they work stiff? Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I don't think they really cared for me because there's a difference when guys, maybe some guys just work hard. You know what I'm saying? They just like, they really lay it in. But you can kind of get a feel when somebody lays it into you because they don't think highly of you. So that's my experience with the Damned. And I'm not trying to badmouth anything because I could be totally, totally wrong. And again, after like 20 something years, it doesn't really make a freaking difference now.
Yeah.
Honestly, it doesn't bother me at all. But do I think back in the day, some of those dudes took it a little personal, maybe? Yeah, definitely.
So for you personally, what has the most challenging part been of being in the pro wrestling industry?
Standing out amongst a sea of everybody who wants to be noticed by, WWE, now AEW. But at the time, it was like WCW, OVW, ECW is fading out, so it was no longer them. But the main goal, of course, was WWE at the time. So that's the toughest thing, is trying to figure out who you. I was 20 something years old when I did this. I didn't even know who the hell I was. You know what I mean? I've started my life over like 3 or 4 times. You know what I'm saying, Joe? At 20 something, you don't even know. So you're trying to develop this character in wrestling, and you don't really have anybody to help you do it. You don't have a talent team telling you should put a mask on or you should wear this because and talk this way. You just kind of have ideas that people throw at you along the way. So you're trying to invent yourself. And then you go about trying to reinvent yourself as the heartthrob Lance Silva. So standing out, I think, is probably if not the most difficult thing to do as a pro wrestler. Because, I mean, take a look. You've got dudes in pro wrestling who, just the way they look, their size, whatever, they stand out. So they can't even wrestle, but they teach them to work enough. That way, they're a money making machine.
And the flip side of
Standing out.
that, what's the most rewarding part been for you of being part of the industry?
Oh man, the forever memories and the forever friends that I've made out of it. I have made, and it's not like we're friends where we talk all the time, because I told you, I live in Portugal. I moved to Portugal almost a year ago. I joined the military years ago. I moved away from the area. So totally different lives. But you always have this connect where like something comes up and, Striker's wife, Missy, will, if anything Macho Man comes up, she'll refer it back to me, because we were in a predicament where we got pulled over, where I just kept it cool and did a Macho Man voice amongst all the chaos that was going on. And they'll never forget that. So the memories, the friends you make. Brickhouse Baker, I know he's a busy guy, excuse me, and I wish we talked more, and I wish we had more friendship. But I respect him as a friend, a mentor, and just a freaking human. He is just an amazing, amazing man. The plus side with that is I've seen all his children, from the tiniest one, Steph, the baby. She's a woman now with 2 kids. I've created workout programs for his oldest son, David. Like these were kids, you know what I'm saying? I've seen these kids grow into men and have families themselves. That's a beautiful thing too. It's a lifetime of beautiful memories in my. And I could hit up David Baker right now and be like, "Hey, bro, you doing all right?" "I'm doing good, man." We were going back and forth for a while, David Baker and I, because he was trying to better his fitness, his lifestyle, and that's what I do. That's my niche right now. So I gave him a program, and he lost weight. Excuse me, and we kept in touch for a while. But life happens, and we lose touch. But if I would hit him up right now and be like, "Hey, Dave, what's going on? You doing all right?" "Yeah, absolutely." Tell your dad I said what's up. And it's a lifetime of memories, a lifetime of friendships. It's really cool. It's really cool to say that you've even stepped in a pro wrestling ring, and not to take a picture with a pro wrestler, but to actually put on a show for somebody in the crowd. Somebody paid to watch you at one point. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
you made an impact as a wrestler on somebody's life at some point. I still have fans on Facebook that are like, "Lance, suicidal." So it's like I had such a profound impact on you that you still remember me. It's like I really appreciate that, because so many people are easily forgotten, and it's nice to leave your mark in certain areas. Like, I chose to get out of the wrestling business and do my life in elsewhere, but to always be remembered as something like that. That's how I got my start in life. You know what I mean? That's how I learned to be a showman in front of people. That's how I learned to gain confidence in front of crowds. That's how I learned to talk on a microphone and give speeches at work if I needed to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all that kind of prepped me into my life.
Right. So, it's a big part of you, like you said, and a big part of you moving forward in the world. It's not just a wrestling thing. It's a tool to get you to that next step in life and know what to expect. When it comes to pro wrestling, though, 3 matches, if you could pick 3 matches, your top 3 or opponents, doesn't have to be a specific match, of all time throughout your career.
Mine.
Yeah.
Top three matches, I can definitely give you two, my top two.
Okay.
It was myself and Brickhouse Baker in Adams, Massachusetts, when that top rope went kaput. My second one was myself versus Rage at the Fisherman's Club for the lightweight championship at YPW. Steve Carino was in the back, and him and Gino Giovanni were going to have a match, I think, and they were watching our match. Steve Carino was watching our match. He had freshly been from ECW, so I was like, we were told that Rage and I did a double super kick where we had practiced this thing for a month. We practiced this match for a month. One of my favorite matches. This match is about 20 minutes, Joe. We had practiced this thing for about 15, 20 minutes for a month. We get in the ring. We're done doing our first spot. The ref's already telling us to take it home. I was like, dude, it's been like 3 minutes. I'm like, absolutely not. Let's keep going. And we did. I don't care what we messed up on that card. We kept going. And we did everything we needed to. We hit that double super kick, timed it perfectly, where Steve Carino apparently even popped backstage. Wow. So I was like, that's our ticket to go work for Philly, Rage. We're going to go. We never got the call, but yeah, that one was. And I would say I had a really good match with Sean Candido on another road show. We were teaming at the time, but we were so far out in like Massachusetts that nobody knew us that they put us against each other. And we had this badass match. No, I'm going to take, that'll be my fourth. Match with Sean Candido, Case High School, Swansea, Massachusetts, steel cage. That was an awesome match.
I think I was actually there for that one. Wow.
It was an awesome match. I could probably name a couple of others. But best people to work with was, I only worked Brickhouse once, but he was definitely obviously my top. Rage was always fun to work with. Gino Giovanni, always fun to work with. There's just some people that I used to work with where, damn, I used to chop the shit out of Gino, and he would get so fucking pissed, and he would just chop the shit out of me back. But he was so like, we were kind of the same weight, so it's like I could kind of toss this dude around and kind of lay into him harder. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the same like weight, so you guys are gonna have a really good match. You know, we always put on good matches. We had a few, and we put on good ones. Had a few good matches with Mike Paiva, but that was like Suicidal era. You know what I mean? Yeah. With Vertebrae, Suicidal era. Rob Roberts, Suicidal era. I do not consider those to be good matches of mine. In fact, I am sad when people only remember me for the Suicidal days because I really enjoyed and poured my heart into the heartthrob gimmick.
Yeah. Now, number one favorite moment in your career, whether it be in ring or outside of the ring, if you could pick that one moment that was just, to this day, you still remember it.
My favorite moment in pro wrestling when I was it was probably, I'm going to say it was when I came back to the locker room that I told you about that day, and I was accepted for the first time by the boys in YPW. That was probably my proudest moment in wrestling.
Yeah. At
that time. Yeah, definitely. I also had another proud moment that I wrestled a few times. I didn't even mention this. Simon Diamond and with his protege, Dawn Marie. Yeah. That was awesome to wrestle a dude that had just been clean from the ECW. That was an experience. And he was wicked cool, dude. And I also wrestled Superfly Jimmy Snuka. That was a proud moment for me. And I'm going to tell you why. That was my dad's favorite wrestler. Remember I told you that at the beginning of the podcast. So to wrestle this dude, I know he was in his 60s at the time, right? Way past his prime. But I was sitting there with him, and I was like, dude, my dad, you were his favorite wrestler. He goes, is he still with us? I was like, he is. He's like, give him my best, brother. And I was like, I sure freaking will, man. That was really cool. Wow. That was the easiest match probably in my career. There's a dude who's a true professional. I went in the ring. Excuse me. This was in Adams, Massachusetts, and I drove 3.5 hours to wrestle this dude. And it was the easiest match. It was the main event. I was the Heartthrob Lance Silva bad guy version, right? Heel. And he went in. We locked up. He did his thing. Locked up this thing. Here I go. I just beat him. He gets like a sense of hope. You know how it goes. I beat him again. He told me, I learned something new that night. Make sure you work me every corner of the ring. That way the crowd, everybody sees it. And I'm like, it's like I know that, but I don't know that. You know what I mean?
So you hear it, right?
Yeah, dude. So now these guys are teaching me how to work mindfully. You know what I mean? The psychology of wrestling. Like, why am I going to do this to this wall of 3 people when there's a crowd of 50 over here that I can do this move? You know what I mean? And not taking away from the crowd of 3, but where's the hard camera when you're doing a pro, right? You're doing the moves for the hard camera, right? So that was a cool moment with Jimmy Snuka. And then, he gave me his fucking Snuka splash, which that's freaking iconic if you ask me. Like
Yeah,
that dude, I will say that thing was stiff. He was light the whole match, but he definitely laid in that Snuka splash.
he got you. So let's talk about Nick Steele, the late Nick Steele. Any memories personally of Nick over the years?
Nick Steele, he was very. There's two versions of Nick Steele that I know, and I'm not speaking ill of anybody, of course. But there's a Nick Steele who was he was a family man at one point when I first started knowing Nick Steele when I was also becoming the heartthrob Lance Silva, and we traveled all together. Myself, his ex-wife at the time, his son David, who also ended up pro wrestling. Nick, we took his van, and this was actually shortly after he had sold me his boots. We took his van and we drove up to Maine, and we made a whole trip out of it. I'm like, this is fantastic. I'm living the life of a pro wrestler here. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm working during the week. Saturday, let's get in the van, snacks, Snapple, diet Snapples, and let's go. And we did. We went to go wrestle for Tony Atlas in Maine, and then we made the trek back. So Nick was always super, super professional, very, very respectful. Another one who's to himself. Nick had a different period in time where he was no longer married, and he became a lot more outgoing, Nick Steele, and he had a lot more fun, and he was more jovial, and you could just see that he was having a good time.
Yeah.
Other than that, I only know him to be as a true professional because, I worked with the man a few times. He taught me a few things. He became the trainer of one of the trainers at Yankee Pro Wrestling in the school, and he taught me a lot. He got us to do a lot of shoot style wrestling at the moment. At that moment. So he would get a couple of guys, it didn't matter who it was, and we'd go in there and we just kind of round robin that sucker, and we would just shoot on each other. And I'm not talking about shoot like we're coming out and they're beating each other's nose and ears and nothing like that, but just grapple and like headlock and reversal and takedown and forearm and this, you know what I mean? So it taught you how to, one, if anybody were to kind of get upset with you in a ring and try to mess with you, you'd have a way of defending and protecting yourself. And
Yeah.
two, it taught you how to think on the fly in a wrestling match. Because how many times have we been in a wrestling match and it doesn't go as according to plan? So you got to improvise quick, or else the crowd's going to let you know that you're not. So by having that shoot style background, even just a little bit, it's definitely beneficial to have that in order to make it look legit, kind of pick up if you mess up. So he was very fond on that because Nick was a shooter himself. Nick was one of those guys where back in the day, if somebody had an issue, kind of like maybe like the Dr. Death, Steve Williams, if somebody had an issue, you would send in Nick Steele and he'd kind of like, professor you around, for lack of better terminology, but not in a disrespectful way, but more in a way like, maybe you won't do this again. Nick was a strong man, and he definitely took the business absolutely 100% serious. And I believe his father was actually, I've never met his father because I think he was deceased way before my time. But I hear he was a lot like his father. So no bad memories of Nick, just very serious, very professional when it came to professional wrestling.
SCCW, New Bedford, Massachusetts. Specifically, any memories working with Chris Venom?
Yeah, a few actually. It wasn't that many, but he was so easy to work with and so easy to get along. Chris Venom's such a good dude. Damn, I haven't even thought of Chris Venom in years. And so I was like, oh yeah, he had kind of like the Apple style pineapple head, right? Like Chris Venom was cool. He was I went down to Bob Evans' school, myself, Julius Sweet, Brian, once or twice, a few times. We got an invite to go and work for Bob Evans' school and wrestle and practice for Bob Evans' school. And Chris Venom was one of the trainers there. So it was cool seeing trainer version Chris Venom versus, happy-go-lucky Chris Venom, who was just happy to be wrestling in the promotion with whomever he was wrestling with, which, was me at sometimes. Chris Venom was cool.
So with all the trainers you've spoken to and worked with over the years, or wrestlers themselves, what would you say the best piece of advice is that you've ever received in the industry?
In the industry, that would be to keep your eyes and ears open in the locker room at all times. I'm lying. I'm going to give you an even better one than that. And it came from Simon Diamond. I was telling my wife this the other day because I still hold true to this in my current line of work. So Simon Diamond told me, because I asked him the same thing. We were talking about our match, and we had some downtime. And I was like, "Hey, if you could give me one piece of advice for pro wrestling, what would it be?" And he was like, "Always be in shape, meaning like always be either in ring shape or look in shape in a way, because in wrestling you want to look a certain way most of the time, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was like, really, I can imagine why you say that, but then he told me why he passes that information on to me. He told me WCW called him when he got laid off from ECW, and they said, "Hey, we have a contract for you, and we're ready to take you next Monday." And he said, "I can't. I let myself get out of shape." And they said, "Well, better luck next time." And
Wow.
he told me that's so I've always taken that. In my life. I'm a 44-year-old man now, and I'm in probably better shape now than I've ever been, because you never know when that opportunity can arise where, just who knows what is out there. Just don't limit yourself. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, Joe?
Yeah. That's great advice, actually. So 2002 Yankee Pro Wrestling, the training center in New Bedford. You worked with diehard Eddie Edwards. You've worked with Eddie Edwards in other locations and other promotions. Any memories of working with Eddie?
Yes, and not in you remember Johnny Nash, correct?
Hollywood Johnny
Johnny
Nash.
Nash, Hollywood Johnny Nash, myself, Johnny Nash, and Eric Trundy Rage were very, very close. We had become very close at that time. So Johnny Nash was like, "Forget this. I'm going to open up my own company, East Coast Championship Wrestling, ECCW." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we had a long talk, and he was like, "Louis, I want." It was over the phone. He's like, "Louis, I want this to be your job," and I'm like, "I want that too, Johnny. I want to be, my work. I want to be pro wrestling." Yes. So I had wrestled Eddie Edwards on that show for the first time. I've the first time I wrestled this dude twice, and it was on ECCW. John Senior was there. I wrestled him the first time, I think, and no, this is what it was. It was like we were going. It was just like, okay, here it is. I got it now. It's all coming back to me, dude. This is crazy. It was for a trophy, and there was a bunch of like middleweights, and excuse me, it was me and Eddie Edwards as the last two, and I was supposed to go over in that match, and because Johnny Nash was going to make me that like intercontinental type star.
Yeah.
So this dude gave me a power bomb. I think I was in the corner, freaking giving him the 10 salute. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Over him. And he gave me this, I'm going to say it, bro, botched power bomb, where I ended up overshooting, boom, freaking knocking myself unconscious. And he had to go over in that match because I was knocked the fuck out.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, I can vaguely remember, and I think the referee was confused, so he was like, cow, and they did, and then the ring announcer didn't know who either of us were, so the ring announcer only announced my name because that's what he saw on the damn piece of paper. You know what I mean? It was a big cluster. So that was my experience working with Eddie Edwards.
Wow. Another SCCW match from the year 2000, Roxbury, Massachusetts.
Oh,
You'd
I know
lock
you're
it up
gonna
with Slick Wagner Brown.
yeah.
Any memories of him?
Of course, that was the only I've seen him. I saw him later on in shows. I think like Primal Conflict. So it was around that time, and I think he was still dating that April gal at the time who went off to do other things, and he was very very professional. And at the time, Slick Wagner Brown was the like independent name when I was getting started. You know what I mean? Like this guy, when I would read about him in the sheets, I would be like, this is going to be the next WWFE project. They're going to take this guy for sure. I mean, look at him. He's talent. So we wrestled in Roxbury. It was probably like 10 people in that crowd. I think we were the first match. It was very quiet because it was 10 people in the crowd. But nonetheless, we put on a good match, and he was easy to work with. He was light and easy money. No drama. No drama.
Two other guys around that time period, GQ Smooth
Oh, yeah.
and also Sweet Scott Ashworth. Any memories of them?
Yes, actually. GQ Smooth was a favorite of mine. He was one of my favorite humans at the time. Very kind, always very, very positive. I think he was a police officer. He was very respectful all the time, and him and I had good characters. That was at the time when I was coming off the heartthrob gimmick, and I was becoming just heartthrob Lance Silva, but not the boy band. You know what I mean? So we
Yeah.
were working a lot in South Coast Championship Wrestling, and we had I would think they were pretty decent matches. Like I used to have all these in a small little camcorder. So he was always very pleasant. He was always wicked nice, and he was always in just laughing mood. You know, he was kind of like he had these really big like cheeks, so he's kind of like he was always fun. He was always a fun
Yeah.
guy. And Scott Ashwood. Scott Ashwood is like classic veteran in the New England wrestling industry. I never had any issues with Scott Veteran, but if I could be honest, I also never had any like nothing with Scott Ashworth. I always wanted Scott Ashworth to like me, but I don't really think he did, to be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know. And maybe he didn't, right? I don't, it doesn't bother me, no hard feelings. Sometimes we judge books by its cover, whatever. But, I always respected him. And we did have a match once where he kind of really botched it bad. And it kind of actually worried me to ever work with this guy again because he could have really, really seriously hurt me. And yeah,
Hmm.
I'll leave it at that. I mean, I never like, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's just, I don't really got much on Scott Ashworth.
Yeah. So, is there anybody that you always wanted to work with, but for whatever reason, schedule wise or different promotions, it just didn't come together?
I'm sure there is. I would have loved to, let's see. Who did we have? There was a few guys I think that I wanted to work with. Well, you remember Vane? I liked working with him. We had some. He was later on, as I was like probably a couple of years before I left.
Yep.
Who did I want to work with that I never got to work with? I don't know. That's a good question. I guess I never thought of that. If we could go out of independent New England wrestling, I would have loved to have worked AJ Styles because that would have been a cool one to do. I
Yeah.
thought that would have been a cool name to have under my belt.
Do you still
But
watch wrestling today?
say that again.
Do you still watch wrestling today?
I do not. I do not. It's completely done a complete shift. As you've seen, you're obviously a wrestling fan, so you've seen the change, and it's no different than somebody in the '90s saying like, "Oh, in the '70s it was better." You know what I mean? Or like, it's just not my. It's just not. I have other goals. I have other things I do. No disrespect. Yeah, I will say this. I do keep up loosely. Like I know John Cena had his last retirement match, right? So like I I keep up as much as like Instagram keeps
Yeah.
up. You know what I mean?
Well,
So
AJ Styles just kind of triggered that question because AJ is retiring at the Royal Rumble this month.
oh, is he really?
Yeah, so he's having his last match against Gunther.
There's one that there's a good specimen of I think he's a good worker. I think
Yeah,
that dude's a good worker. He's got a good character. He yeah. Teddy Goods wrestled him, as you know.
Teddy Goods wrestled him.
Wrestled Gunther.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, on SmackDown like a few years back.
Oh, right. Yes. No, that's
Yeah,
right.
you totally knew that.
Awesome.
Teddy Goods would have been a good match. I would have liked Teddy Goods versus a heartthrob match, but not at the time when he was with a score,
Right.
but a Teddy Goods today versus like a more polished heartthrob Lance Silva would have been a pretty good
Sure. Both
match.
of you guys in your prime at the same
I
time.
think so. I
That would
think
have been
so.
great. Yeah, I think
It would
so
be
too.
fun.
2004 Yankee Pro Wrestling. You'd work with Jonah from Tough Enough. Any memories of
Oh
that?
yeah, I forgot. That's hilarious, dude. That's hilarious. Jonah is Jonah was cool. He had just done Tough Enough, right? So they were like, "Oh, this is when they were giving me stars to work with." The first one was going to be our Truth, who was K Quick at the time, but something happened, and I ended up wrestling Simon Diamond, and then it was Jimmy Snuka, and then I was supposed to wrestle. Who did you just say? The
Oh, Jonah?
Jonah. And then I ended up wrestling Jonah. They were like, "You're gonna wrestle Jonah." I was like, "Are you serious? That's awesome. Like this dude just left Tough Enough." So Jonah, he was very, very, very conceited. And I remember him going to like a CVS and like him asking the girl at the front counter, like, "Do you know who I am?" or "You don't recognize me," or something. And the
Wow.
girl's like, and he's like, I was on TV doing blah blah blah, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I thought you looked familiar." He was so easy to work with compared to like guys like. It's so funny because you work somebody like Jonah who has like the only training he's ever had is from like Bob Holly, all that, which is legitimate training, right? But he's only been in the business this long. You get with guys like Brickhouse who have different training, who's been in the business this long, and you can feel the different styles of work. Like
Yeah.
Jonah was very, very easy. He was very balloony. You know, he was very juiced up at the time, very big. We went to the crowd. It was easy. It was an easy. I was the heel. He was the face. I just beat him up, and then I put him over. Easy. But it's different than working Brickhouse because you know Jonah will have one or two moves that he's perfected, and Brickhouse will just go through a plethora of a match. You know what I'm saying? The dude will never have the same match three times in a row.
Yeah.
With this
And he,
guy, Jonah only know that.
yeah, absolutely.
That was a good reminder, Joe. Thank you. I
Yeah,
totally kind of
that's
forgot about
what I'm
that.
here for, right? So let's talk about fan interactions. Is there a fan interaction that you remember to this day, you know, maybe whether it be positive or negative, you know, something with the fans over the years throughout your career?
I never had any negative other than the booze that I wanted. I remember, you remember Gerard at the PAL and his family, his entourage, one of the, you know, coolest, like hardest independent pro wrestling fans of all. He would boo if you were a heel and he would cheer you if you were a face, no matter what. And the Fall River fans were always my favorite to rile up, especially when you were doing like bad guy characters. But it's so funny because then they'd see you out in town and they'd be like, I know you, you're suicidal or you're a heartthrob. And I used to work at Blockbuster Video. So like people would see me and they'd be like, you kind of look familiar. And I'm like, because I was trying to keep it kayfabe because I was on my way to the WWF. My life was like wrestling. You know what I'm saying? I was like, that's not me. That's my twin brother. And they'd be like, what? You got a twin? And I'd be like, yeah.
Mount Rushmore. Now, there's different ways you could look at it, you know, most successful, personal favorites, however you want to look at it, chiming in your inner fan. Who is your personal Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling history? Any era.
Any era? You talking about just independent or like
I guess on the grand stage, WWF, WCW, any other territories, you know.
best workers of all time? I would say definitely like Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage. Big fan of Kurt Hennig. And now let's bring it down to the newer, you know, not new now, but like Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle. And I know Kurt Angle was an Olympic wrestler, but that dude is probably one of the best workers of all time. In my opinion, the dude could do it. He did it. He had a natural talent for professional wrestling. Like he could act, whether he was a face or a heel, and he could do it when he was in his prime. Shawn Michaels the same way. That dude had a gift, and those were my style guys. You know what I'm saying? They were kind of like what I as a child wanted to look like, be the moves they did. I was never a big guy. I'm 5'10", so I knew I wasn't going to be like Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan. I knew I was going to be like guys like hopefully you know Marty Jannetty and Ricky Steamboat. Thankfully not Marty Jannetty now, but like back in the day, how was his look? You know, middleweights, cruiserweights, intercontinental style level. So I would say those. I'd say Ricky Steamboat. And I know people argue like Ric Flair, and Ric Flair's fantastic, but I would, I mean, I like Arn Anderson more than I would just a different style. You know, I like Arn Anderson's work more than I like. I respect Ric Flair, but he's just not on my Mount Rushmore. You know,
Sure.
guys like Steamboat, guys like Henning, even Hitman, if I could, you know, have another one. Those are all my style guys. Even guys like freaking Davey Boy Smith and Dynamite Kid when they were together. But even Davey Boy when he went on his own, I thought he was cool. He was a powerhouse, but he was agile and he can move around for a
Right.
big dude.
Now, how about Rushmore on the other side for New England specific, for the men?
Let's do. I would say. Hmm. I guess I'm not sure because I don't really know who's around. But if I could take what I know, I would say as far as like who's still doing it, who's had the most influence, and me not being biased or anything. I would say Brickhouse for sure. Scott Ashworth. I would say the independent scene. Who else comes to mind? My era. I mean, Jose paved the way for a lot too back in the day. He was always pretty professional too.
Yeah.
And if I could give you one more, hmm, dang, I don't know, dude.
No, that's
I'm
all
not
right.
sure.
Yeah. And now, Dangerous Donnie Rotten, another person you've worked with. Any memories of Donnie?
Donnie Rotten. Who was Donnie Rotten?
He had the vest. He had like the frizzy 80s hair. Real nice guy. Had a goatee.
Oh yeah, he was wicked nice, wasn't he,
Good,
dude?
nice. Nicest guy.
I have no bad memories. Let me think of anybody that you'd probably want to hear some juice from. No.
Oh, that's all right. I'm not looking to get any negative stuff. I try to keep it positive.
No, no, I'm not trying to put negativity out there anyway. We
Yeah.
all have like, the highlight kid. I told you about him. Him and I had
Yeah.
like a little, just stuff like that. Other than that, I've been pretty cool with like I think almost everybody in my time of pro wrestling. Like as the years went on, I learned that it was just. I mean, we all grow, we all say things, we all make mistakes, and I don't want to hold it against anybody. And I didn't. I always kept. I always try to maintain a pretty decent relationship with these guys, and even some of the guys that were younger. Like I don't know if you remember Carlos V, who tragically passed away this past January. He was a
Mm.
young kid. He was like 30 something, but this kid started wrestling when I was finishing wrestling, and he was still doing it. And he passed away. I'm not sure how. But even guys like later on, I would sometimes keep in touch with. So yeah,
Yeah. And I'll mention one more name, Heavenly Johnny Angel.
Heavenly Johnny Angel was always a another professional to work with. He was always very kind to me. He, I don't think we had a. I think we might have had a few like tag matches but nothing. We did have a couple of singles matches when I was a South Coast champion. That's
Yes.
right, South Coast coastal champion. Very easy to work with. Just easy to work with. Total professional. Um, he always had to eat a hamburger after every match. And one time I asked him because I was trying to learn how to like bodybuild and build muscle at the time. I'm like, "Why do you eat a hamburger after every single match that you have, dude?" He's like, "I don't know. Every time I'm done having a match, I need something greasy." And I was like, then later on in life, I'm thinking like, well, if you work out, if you go to the gym and you work out, your body afterwards wants some sort of like protein, carbohydrate, maybe fat. So maybe that's what he was doing it for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So, advice. What advice do you have for somebody who's looking to get into the business now?
If you are looking, so I don't follow pro wrestling now, but when I got into the business, I was very cocky, I was very conceited, and I was 17 years old. And if I could change that, I would go in with keep your mouth shut, listen to everything everybody tells you. Does that mean everything everybody tells you is going to be right? Absolutely not. Everybody has an opinion, everybody has something to say, everybody wants to be heard. But that's up to you to figure out what is valuable knowledge and what is knowledge you don't need to live with. So keep your ears open, keep your eyes open, because at least when I was in the pro wrestling industry, can still, I'm sure, be a cutthroat business. It's not an easy business, especially the time when I was in and prior to that. Like, I think there's a lot more um, hold now and less bullying, perhaps. And, there was a lot of like harassment back in the day. And I'm not glorifying that one bit. And I don't think that's should be tolerated anywhere. So,
Yeah.
in this day and age, I wouldn't tolerate being harassed, but I would definitely keep my eyes and ears open for any information that is available. Information is free, and if you can listen to things, if you can hear somebody getting chewed out to never do that again in their match, listen to that. Like learn from other people's mistakes. And I will tell you this: I am living proof of this. I'm a 44-year-old man. I'm in the best shape of my life. I moved to Portugal. If you believe it enough, you will succeed. I promise. And I know people are like, yeah, yeah. Listen, I believed it enough when I was young that I wanted to be a pro wrestler. I did it. I did it for 6 or 7 years. Regardless if I did it as a career or not, I still did it. I still stepped between those ropes. I still wrestled a couple of stars. I still got to show my talent to a crowd of many. Whatever you want in life, you work towards it, you think about it, you act as if you already have it, and you will get it. I promise. I promise. You
I
guys
think
got this.
in closing, fast forward many years from now, but looking back at your career as a whole, what would you say is your legacy? How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as Louis is a very um, I have a really good heart. I have a really, really good heart. And um, I wish the best for everybody. I just want to see everybody succeed. There's enough money out there for all of us. You know what I mean? I just want to see people help each other out in a world where there's so much hurt, so much turmoil. It's nice to see a few people like patting each other on the back and reassuring people that it's going to be okay. I like to be that voice of reason. For years now, so many people have always come up to me and, I'm good to vent to and I listen and, I give, I guess, good advice, but I just want to see everybody make it. If they really want something in life, I just want to see you go at it. And I am a firm believer that you can get any. I want to be remembered as somebody who helped you believe in yourself to achieve whatever goal it is that you want in life.
Awesome. Well, Louis, I appreciate you taking the time today. It's been awesome catching up.
Thank you, Joe. It's been a long time. I really appreciate you taking the time and thinking of me for your podcast. Joe, can I give my shameless plug out to your fans?
Let's hear it. Whatever you got going on.
So I moved to Portugal almost a year ago, and I have I'd say, a decent presence on social media right now on both Instagram and TikTok. I go by Louis in Portugal, and it's just my daily antics. I travel, I eat, I'm getting pushed out there, and I love it. And if you guys want to see part of my journey that I have and the people that I meet and work with, check me out at Louis in Portugal. And my wife is Morgan in Portugal. And
Wow.
she's got a lot more people than I do following, but we're both on our way to great stuff, I hope. So thank you so much, Joe.
Very cool, man. I hope things work out for you guys. Glad you're happy there. And, sky is the limit. So definitely encourage the fans to check you guys out on TikTok and social media. And wish you the best of success moving forward. And hopefully we could do this again sometime.
I'm looking forward to it, dude. Thank you. These 2 hours have gone by like you've helped me resurrect so many memories, and I appreciate that, dude.
Yeah, man. No, absolutely. For Luis Silva, I'm Joseph Bruen, and this has been the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments. We'd love to hear from you, the fans, what you thought of this episode and what you'd like to see in the future. And as always, we will see you next time.